Hello, this is Jenny Clark with Florida GovCon Podcast, and today I'm really excited to be interviewing Barbara Stankowski, who's the CEO of Amtis Corporation. Barbara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here, Jenny.
Well, I'm so glad that we're talking about this, and I really appreciate your working with me on the Florida GovCon Summit, which we got coming up on February 28th and March the 1st, because you're going to be a speaker talking about joint ventures and partnering. So, Barbara, one of the things we talked about when I saw you last was really embedding your culture or figuring out how your employees work together and how they represent the culture of your company. And so I call this creating a culture of trust. And I guess what that really means is going back to why you founded it, why you started it, and what AMTIS is all about. And I wondered if you could just start off by talking a little bit about yourself and how you started AMTIS and where you've been and where you're going.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Jenny. So a little background, I started AMPTIS in 2007. Um, I had spent 28 years in the Navy and came with a lot of experience from a government perspective. I worked for 8 years with some woman-owned small businesses, and there were some things that, and I was a student of leadership and the things that make companies function well. Um, I had taught leadership for a long time. And so in starting AMPTIS, I kind of felt like AMPTIS was my lab for trying out and putting together all these things I've studied and observed over many years to see whether or not I could bring them together to create a great working culture. I wanted to create a place where people could bring their passion to work, where they were given the tools and the resources they need to do the job that you were asking them to, where they were recognized and rewarded, where their opinion counted, where, you know, uh, doing something wrong was something to learn from, not something to throw somebody under the bus. So trying to create a learning culture where we just learned and worked together to get constantly better. So that was kind of my goal.
And so, in creating something that people can learn from, I'm sure that you've got a lot of ways that you help them understand that. And I'm sure when they first start there, they don't really necessarily follow what you're doing, although that's part of the communication of the culture that really makes a difference. It makes AMTIS different and your company different.
Right. You know, if you read any of the books or go out to Gallup poll and talk about employee engagement, and they give you the grim statistics that less than 50% of your workforce is actively engaged, or less than 20% of your workforce is actively engaged in day-to-day work. You know, what a waste of talent and time. So how do you create a culture that's different? So several things. One, we don't do performance evaluations. I don't believe in ranking and rack and stacking my team and making winners and losers of the team. I believe that you hire people who are passionate and contribute to the company, and you recognize them and reward them for that contribution. That's been my premise from the beginning. So through the 11 years that AMPTIS has been growing and changing, we have worked to kind of quantify this in a performance management strategy, document it, roll it out, and teach our managers and leaders about our expectations for them in providing feedback and helping people grow and develop and helping people learn and helping people learn from experience and mistakes. Um, we have had this formalized and in place for about 4 years now, and it has worked really well in a number of ways. I had a lot of people in the beginning who were naysayers about not doing performance evaluations. You know, if we've got somebody who's not performing, you go to HR and you put them on an improvement plan. Doesn't mean the remaining 99% of your workforce needs to do that. Um, so it's worked very well for us. So it consists of four major components. One is establishing the goals, goal setting, setting the goals and expectations for a new person when they join our team, what our expectations are from an organizational level, and then specific goals on what's expected of them for the project that they've been assigned to. I expect my managers and supervisors to be coaches and mentors. I expect them to have frequent conversations about performance, about the good and the bad with their employees. I expect them to know their employees and have conversations so they know who their team is and what their talents are. Every individual of our team is responsible for their individual development plan, but our managers and supervisors are responsible for having conversations about individual development plans. I may not be able to employ the individuals on our team for their life, but I can certainly help them have interesting work and continue to develop so they've got great bullets on their resume so they're always employable. And then rewards and recognition. We do everything from writing thank you notes to saying thank you to providing gift cards to having parties and celebrations. And then basically we have profit sharing across the board for the members of our team. So that's kind of the performance management strategy approach, and it's worked really well for us, and I'm very pleased with it. And some of the folks who were most negative about this kind of approach to performance are now some of the greatest supporters.
Well, I'm so glad to hear about your program of not having performance evaluations, because it seems like you're taking a lot more interest in what we want to achieve than you are check marks and blocks and pieces of information that maybe help you with the people that are struggling, but don't help you with the higher performers to help them perform better. And when you said that you don't want to set in place policies that that really don't take care of the 99% of the company that is performing. And so it's a very positive approach you're taking.
Right. And we're very proactive in helping people improve performance. And if they don't, in suggesting that there's probably someplace else they would do better, that this was not the place for them. And we encourage them and kind of push them out the door. I don't have time for non-performers in the organization.
Well, when you're dealing with the dispersed workforce, maybe you don't see all of them in your area at the same time, or they're working at a government facility or something like that. Having some way that you're communicating and engaging them is so important.
And that's why we bring our site leads in once a year, our site leads and our managers and supervisors, and we continually provide training. We constantly reinforce this approach, and we help give them the tools and the training necessary to be effective. You know, Gallup poll says that people don't leave organizations, they leave their immediate supervisor. So the relationship between the supervisor and the manager are key.
Oh, and that is so important. The other thing that I thought was interesting is you pointed out that these people aren't employees for life. That used to be what people would expect, is they'd started a company and stay there. But particularly in our federal contracting industry, you're working with people on different time periods. And the other thing that's happened over the last several years is that more people are moving around more because it's just a different expectation in the workforce, where we all have to be flexible and learning all the time. And I think what you're really talking about is, how do you take care of somebody that's only going to be with you for 3 years on a contract and you don't know for sure if they'll stay beyond that? And that's really been a challenge, I'm sure.
Right. Well, and in addition, this tries to formalize and communicate our overarching approach. But coupled with this, we started off by talking about creating a corporate culture of trust. Well, this is a piece of it. But then living and abiding by this is a requirement. And then having each supervisor, manager, leader in the organization walking the talk and demonstrating by their own behavior the leadership that we espouse. To me, culture is established by the worst behavior that's allowed in the organization.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. So you've had this in place, I think you said for 4 years. So can you talk a little bit about measuring results?
Sure. I think there are a number of ways, but the crux is what's the feedback from your team members who work here every day. We do a number of things. One, we average a retention rate between 5 and 10%, and people will say, well, man, that's kind of high. But the bottom line is we have that because we don't feel the necessity to support or keep non-performers. So I think we have a very good system, but the people who are here, who perform, love being here and want to stay. When we lose a contract or a contract ends and we have to let people go, their feedback is all about wanting to come back, how much they've enjoyed working here, what a great culture we've created. We also do an annual survey. We've done it 2 years in a row now, to go out to our team members and get feedback. We use a number of the Gallup poll questions to see whether or not the Gallup poll questions related to employee engagement. And we've ranked very well, constantly increasing from the previous year to this year. But I think most telling, we asked the question, what is it you'd like to tell Barbara about what's working or not working in the company? The number one comment, and again, we used a tool, we didn't use typical monkey or Survey Monkey where, the surveys go out, the people fill them out, they come back in, and HR takes all the information and tries to sort through it and decide what's important. We used a crowdsourcing tool called Waggle, where we had a number of questions that could be ranked on a scale of 1 to 5. Those were the Gallup poll questions. And then this open-ended question. And what was really cool is people could put in their comments, and then everybody else who was filling out the survey can constantly go back in and review what other people have said and vote on the things that they agree with or disagree with. And so this kind of pairing of people's comments and people voting on them, at the end, you end up with a prioritized list of comments prioritized by your constituents, by your team, not by HR and not by someone else. And again, this was a little scary to do the first time as the CEO, thinking, boy, anybody can say anything and everybody's going to see it. I think what's most interesting is that the number one, actually the top 5, all related to the great culture, the trust, the fact that people aren't micromanaged, that they're free to do their work, that they can do their passion. Those kinds of comments, I think, reiterate that what we've set up is working.
Well, and that's really a good sign. And I can imagine that it would be scary to put it out there just open-ended. And the fact that you do that as part of the culture too, it means we're really interested. We do want to hear what you want to say, and we want to learn from what you're giving us as feedback just as well as we're expecting you to learn from whatever you're doing.
Right. And the first year we did this, the one question that was rated like at about 68 to 70%, that was the lowest rating of those Gallup poll questions, and it was a Gallup poll question related to my opinion counts at work. And so we went back out to begin kind of socializing and talking a little bit more about how important it is for leaders, managers, and supervisors to listen to their team members and to accept their input. Dr. Deming used to always say, if you want to know what's wrong in a process, ask the people who work in it because they know. But you only know if you're willing to listen to them. And I was pleased to see an increase in that rating the following year. So we do get the feedback, we do pay attention to it, and we do take action to help constantly improve the environment we've created.
Well, and that is the proof that you are a learning organization because you're gathering data and making changes and learning more. So, well, Barbara, I really appreciate your time today. I'm looking forward to hearing you at the Florida GovCon Summit. You have got a lot of expertise in joint ventures, and your talk's going to be about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You want to give everybody an idea of what you'll be talking about with the joint venture presentation?
Sure. I've done this presentation with my mentor. I've been in an SBA approved mentor protege program with a company out of Washington for the last 5 years. Often people think about joint ventures or a mentor protege relationships, and they don't think about how long term they are and how difficult it is to manage the relationship when you go through this time where sometimes you compete with each other, sometimes you team together. Meanwhile, you're always a joint venture is a company. You're running a joint venture together at the same time. So it makes for interesting dynamics. And Heidi and I put together this presentation that we have done together. She's given it without my input, but the slides were prepared by both of us together. To talk about the challenges of both being the mentor and the protege and the operation of these joint ventures, these companies together. So I want to share that combined learning with the audience, Jenny.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that. I was actually at the National Small Business Veterans Coalition meeting in Tampa a couple months ago, and Heidi gave the presentation, and it was just so open about here are things that we went through that we really didn't think about at the time, and here's how we solved them. So it was very good information to prepare other people that are looking at those type of relationships and truly understanding who plays what role and how you have to work those things out because you're married in a way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's a time when you no longer provide or meet a need, right? Mm-hmm. We've grown. We are now dealing with $20 million NACE codes. We're not small. We're of no particular use to my mentor anymore. And so it's an evolving relationship, and you still want to be good professional associates, choose to work together when it's appropriate, but understand that you both have to go out and seek other partners for a variety of different reasons.
And that's the other part of the presentations that we'll be doing at the Florida GovCon Summit, calling it right now the power of partnering, because you've worked with Karen Gregory of HRSS Consulting and also Kizzy Dominguez of K-Parks, I believe, is your protege. Could you talk a little bit about partnering and how you've seen it change?
I don't know that I've seen it changed. I do believe that for companies to be successful across their lifetime requires the ability to build long-term trusting relationships with large, medium, and small companies. That survival and growth is based on successfully building those relationships and maintaining them across time. I don't think any companies are successful by themselves.
Oh, absolutely. So, well, Barbara, I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the Florida GovCon Summit. And if people want to get in touch with you, I've just listed your website, which is amtusinc.com. Is that the best way to reach you?
Either that, or they can email me at bstankowski@amtusinc.com.
Okay. So the event is the Florida GovCon Summit, February 28th and March the 1st in Orlando. We've got 2 days of presentations about targeting, teaming, and tactics for federal contractors, and really focused on those companies that have been in federal contracting and want to learn some of the more advanced techniques. And we're bringing together experts or companies that have been through it to talk about that. So, Barbara, thanks so much for being on the podcast today, and I look forward to talking to you in a few weeks.
It's been my pleasure, Jenny. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you.